Focus on yourself and watch everything fall into place. The moment you stop chasing everything outside of you, life begins to chase you. Focus on yourself, not to escape the world, but to master your place within it. Your energy sharpens. Your path clears. People start treating you differently, not because they've changed, but because you have. You don't need to force anything when you're aligned within. Stay with me until the end, because the last truth I'll share is what makes everything finally fall into place. Comparison is a thief. It doesn't steal all at once, it chips away, quietly, relentlessly. It sneaks in through a glance, a scroll, a headline, a conversation, and before you know it, your peace is gone. Not because something is wrong with your life, but because you looked too long at someone else's. You stopped tending your own ground to watch how quickly someone else was growing. You forgot that becoming cannot be rushed, that growth is not a performance, that your journey is not meant to match anyone else's pace, shape, or rhythm. And yet, this is the trap most people fall into. They wake up and immediately look outward. How far ahead is he? How much cleaner is her image? How come I don't feel that certain, that strong, that loved, that successful? But the more you stare at someone else's lane, the more you veer off your own. There is no peace in watching someone else's path. You weren't born to copy, you were born to become. You were not designed to mimic someone else's highlight reel. You were designed to live through your own chapters. And every time you give your energy to comparison, you starve your own progress. It makes you question your timing. It makes you resent your process. It convinces you that your steps are too slow, too small, too insignificant. And once that seed of doubt takes root, it spreads. You start rushing your development. You start skipping the depth. You start performing for applause instead of acting from intention. And without realizing it, you're no longer building your life, you're building a projection, a brand, a response to someone else's image. That's not power. That's panic wearing confidence as a costume. To focus on yourself is not arrogance, it is protection. It is wisdom. It is the discipline to say, I'm not here to be seen, I'm here to become. It is the strength to withdraw from the noise, to unsubscribe from the race, and to return to your breath, to your pace, to your work, because that's where real clarity lives, not in chasing speed, but in honoring alignment, not in competing with strangers, but in outgrowing the weakest parts of yourself. That is the real mission. And it's one that no algorithm, no feed, no validation can define for you. It has to come from the inside, built in silence, in practice, in patience. You must learn to disconnect, to intentionally turn your gaze away from what everyone else is doing and ask the harder question, what am I becoming? Not what looks good, not what's trending, what's real, what's lasting, what's mine. Because your path, your exact, imperfect, unpredictable path is sacred. It's not supposed to look like theirs. It's not supposed to move as fast, feel as smooth, or deliver its rewards on demand. It is tailored to your soul. It will break you in ways that prepare you. It will slow you down in seasons that force you to grow deeper roots. And if you abandon that process to chase someone else's image, you'll lose the only thing that ever had real power, your own becoming. So return to your rhythm, to your process, to your breath. Because when you do, when you stop watching and start building, you'll remember what the world tries to make you forget. You're not behind. You're becoming. Where energy leaks, life falls apart. Not always in loud or obvious ways. Often it happens slowly, quietly, so quietly you don't notice it until the fatigue becomes normal, until the numbness settles in, until the weight that you carry every day starts to feel like part of who you are. But that weight, it's not just life being hard, it's energy being lost. Your energy is not infinite, it's your most precious currency. And what you give away, especially unconsciously, does not come back easily. You spend it every day. And most people don't realize how much they're losing until they have nothing left for the things that actually matter. It doesn't always come from massive distractions, it comes from the subtle drains. From arguing just to be right. From holding on to relationships, habits, and narratives that no longer fit who you're becoming. From forcing conversations that always loop back into the same unresolved place. From trying to prove yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. From mentally rehearsing situations that already ended. All of this pulls from the same limited tank. And every drop you waste on something meaningless is a drop you no longer have for something essential: your health, your work, your creativity, your clarity, your peace. This is why focus matters. Not because it makes you faster or more productive, but because it helps you see. When you focus on yourself with honesty, with presence, you start to recognize where you've been bleeding energy for years. You see it in the people you keep entertaining out of guilt. You see it in the conversations you keep revisiting that never lead anywhere. You see it in the internal stories you tell yourself about who you're supposed to be, what you should have done by now, what you must accomplish to be enough. And maybe the biggest leak, the version of you that you refuse to let go of, the one built on survival, on old pain, on someone else's expectations. But once you step back, once you disconnect from the noise and return to a place of stillness, you begin to see clearly. The leaks aren't mysteries, they're patterns, they're behaviors that used to serve you but now sabotage you. They're commitments you once needed but now keep you small. And the moment you identify them, you reclaim a piece of your life. You stop pouring energy into what no longer feeds you. You stop pretending that every connection is worth maintaining. You stop leaking power just to keep peace that isn't real. When you plug those leaks, when you stop chasing dead ends, stop explaining yourself to people who aren't listening, stop giving time to things that dilute your presence, everything begins to shift. Your mind feels lighter. Your decisions become cleaner. You start moving through your day with more clarity and less chaos. This isn't magic. It's mathematics. More energy kept equals more energy available. And with that reclaimed energy, you don't just survive, you start building again. You show up for yourself in ways you didn't think were possible, not because you became stronger, but because you stopped wasting strength. Focus is not about control. It's about conservation. It's not about saying yes to more. It's about having the courage to say no to what no longer serves you. Focus means protecting your energy like it's sacred, because it is. It means realizing that every interaction, every task, every mental spiral has a cost. And if it doesn't lead you forward, it's dragging you backward. Simple as that. So ask yourself, where are the leaks? Where are you pouring effort with no return? Who are you giving your time to that hasn't earned your trust? What old version of you are you still carrying just because it's familiar? Sit with those answers. Write them. Burn them if you need to. But don't ignore them. Because when you stop feeding what drains you, you'll be shocked at how fast your life realigns. You're not lost, you're distracted. That statement, if you're honest, should hit like a brick, because it doesn't point at the world or your circumstances. It points directly at the mirror, and that's what makes it hard to swallow. We've been conditioned to believe that clarity is something we find, like a map we stumble upon after wandering long enough. But clarity isn't lost. It's just buried under habits, under noise, under years of reacting instead of living. Most people know what they want. Deep down, they've always known. They've fantasized about the life, they've spoken the vision to themselves late at night, they've written the goals in notebooks or whispered them in passing. But then, they scatter. They wake up and give their time to everything but that vision. They scroll, they compare, they panic, they chase, and then they wonder why they're tired, confused, uncertain. But it's not confusion, it's overstimulation, it's attention turned into currency for the wrong systems. And until you reclaim that attention, you'll keep calling distraction being stuck. Let's be honest, this is the cost of modern life. Your mind is not failing you, it's just overwhelmed. And it's overwhelmed by design. There are entire industries built on breaking your focus. Everything you touch is optimized to keep you scrolling, reacting, consuming, comparing. The feeds don't care about your peace. The apps don't care about your goals. They care about your time, your eyes, your clicks. And most people never realize how much of their energy is being stolen until they try to sit still and can't. Their mind races. Their breath shortens. The silence feels threatening. Because distraction has become a drug, noise has become normal. Stillness feels like withdrawal. But without stillness, you can't see what matters. You can't feel what's real. And you keep reaching outward to fix something that was always an inside job. This is why the inner work matters, not in a cliché, not in a spiritual fluff kind of way, but in the most practical, grounded sense possible. You're not broken. You don't need to be rescued. You need to sharpen. You need a return to center. You need space between stimulus and response. That's what inner work gives you. It's the discipline to unplug from the world before it programs your day. It's the structure that holds you steady when the emotional waves hit. It's the spine of your routine, the sacred repetition that builds strength when motivation dies. You need silence not because it sounds deep, but because it is deep. It clears the fog and lets you see. You need structure not because you crave control, but because it keeps your time from being stolen by things that don't matter. Here's the truth. One focused hour a day changes everything. And no, it doesn't require you to have the perfect space, the perfect mood, or the perfect tools. It just requires a line in the sand. 1 hour where your body, your breath, your attention belong to you. Not to your job, not to your phone, not to someone else's crisis. Just to you. You move, you breathe, you read something that sharpens your mind. You reflect, you plan, you reset. And while the rest of the world rushes to keep up, you become grounded. While others respond emotionally, you move strategically. You no longer live scattered. You live in sequence, not because you're above anyone, but because you finally realize the cost of living diluted. And that's the shift, the moment you realize you weren't behind. You were just bleeding energy into distractions. You weren't broken. You were just stretched too thin to hold power. And now, you stop. You pull that energy back. You reclaim your mornings. You give yourself the clarity of solitude before the day can demand your presence. You don't wait for motivation. You set the standard. You don't chase everything, you build one thing, and that one thing begins to reshape everything else. You don't need to prove. You don't need to rush. You just need to focus. Not forever, just today, then again tomorrow. And slowly, the distracted version of you dissolves. The anxious one, the reactive one, the one who felt like life was always slipping. It doesn't disappear in an instant. It fades through repetition, through presence, through structure. You stop escaping your own life and finally start building it, not for attention, but for freedom. Quietly, deliberately, powerfully. So no, you're not lost. You've just been distracted. But distraction is a habit, and presence is a discipline. Choose well, and keep choosing it until it becomes who you are. Self-trust is the root of real power, not the loud kind, not the kind that needs to be seen or applauded, but the kind that builds quiet certainty. The kind that holds firm under pressure, stays grounded through storms, and doesn't flinch when the world throws doubt, delay, or distraction your way. And yet, for most people, that kind of trust is missing. Not because they never had it, but because they lost it slowly over time. Erosion by 1,000 small lies. I'll start tomorrow. I'll just skip this once. It doesn't matter that much. They say these things with a smile, maybe even a laugh, thinking they've dodged the discomfort. But what they've really done is cut a thread, and thread by thread, the connection to self weakens, until one day they look in the mirror and see someone they no longer fully believe in. When you focus on yourself, not selfishly, but deliberately, you begin to repair that connection. You start to rebuild something most people have quietly surrendered: trust in your own word. Not trust in your image, not trust in your potential, trust in your follow-through, in your ability to say something and mean it, to commit and execute. To show up even when the energy is gone, the mood has shifted, and no one's watching. That kind of trust isn't built in public. It's built in silence, in small, simple decisions. And every time you say, "I'll do it," and actually do it, no matter how small, you reinforce the foundation. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you send a message to your nervous system: I am someone who can be counted on. But the reverse is also true. Every time you make a promise and break it, especially the quiet ones, the ones no one else hears, you weaken that bond. You train your mind to expect failure. You reinforce the belief that you don't really mean what you say, that your discipline is flexible, that your words are conditional. And over time, that self-doubt becomes familiar. It becomes the lens through which you see everything. You doubt your goals. You doubt your instincts. You second-guess your choices. Not because they're wrong, but because you've forgotten what it feels like to trust your own fire. The way out isn't noise. It's not in some huge performance. It's not in shouting your intentions to the world. That doesn't fix anything. That's a mask. The way out is quiet, simple, repetitive. You rebuild that trust in silence, one promise at a time, one boundary held, one decision that honors your standards, not your feelings, not your urges, not your comfort, but your values. And you repeat it daily, not perfectly but consistently. You do what you said you would. You go where you said you'd go. You complete what you start. And each time, the roots grow deeper. Each time, your sense of self becomes harder to shake. That's how you stop living on emotional roller coasters. That's how you stop breaking every time life applies pressure. It's not because the pressure disappears, but because you don't. You stop crumbling. You stop negotiating. You stop reaching for external anchors because you've built an internal one. That's the real power. When your strength doesn't come from what others say about you, but from what you know about you. And when you trust yourself again deeply, consistently, nothing outside of you can take that from you. No comment, no delay, no rejection. Because the core is intact. You don't chase validation. You don't beg for approval. You just move with clarity, with alignment, with presence. And yes, it takes time. It takes patience. You won't rebuild self-trust in one day. Just like no strong tree is rooted overnight. But each repetition counts. Each aligned decision matters. Each boundary is a brick. And eventually the doubt fades, not because it vanishes, but because your actions speak louder than your insecurity. You've shown yourself too many times who you are, and that evidence becomes your foundation. So start there. One promise, one act of discipline, one reminder to your future self: I've got you. Repeat that enough and the world can shake, but you won't. Everything aligns when you're present, not when you're perfect, not when you have all the answers, but when you finally stop running. When you stop fighting yourself, stop abandoning yourself, stop distracting yourself long enough to simply be here, because that's what most people never do. They live their whole lives in motion, chasing, proving, projecting, trying to catch up to a life they believe exists somewhere outside of them. Success, peace, clarity, purpose, they're always imagined as destinations, milestones to reach, people to impress, things to achieve. But what if it's never been about out there? What if everything you've been chasing has been waiting right here for you to finally return? This is what most don't realize. They think the answer is in more noise, more doing, more performing. But the moment you stop chasing just for a moment, you'll notice something strange happens. The mind slows, the breath deepens, the chaos doesn't go away, but it starts to settle. And in that stillness, something ancient stirs. A clarity that doesn't scream, a knowing that doesn't explain, a voice that only shows up when you're finally quiet enough to hear it. That voice doesn't come from others, it comes from presence. And presence doesn't happen by accident, it's a choice. One you must make daily, even moment to moment, to return to the body, to return to the breath, to return to yourself, not the version of you the world expects, but the one that is. You want alignment, you want real peace, you don't get there by doing more, you get there by paying attention, by watching your own thoughts, not judging them, not fighting them, just noticing them, by listening to your breath, not forcing it, but allowing it to anchor you, by noticing how you speak when no one is listening, how you act when there's no applause. That's where alignment lives, not in the image, but in the integrity, in the spaces no one sees. When your inner world and your outer behavior begin to reflect the same intention, life starts to move with you, not against you. That's the shift. See, life doesn't need to be forced into place. It never did. What it needs is for you to get out of your own way, to stop resisting what is, to stop pretending you're not tired, to stop ignoring what your body is telling you, to stop numbing the emotions that are trying to teach you. When you fight reality, you break yourself. When you stop fighting, you begin to move with the rhythm of life. You begin to feel again, think clearly again, create from a place of peace instead of pressure. And from that space, everything begins to realign, not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because you become steadier. You've been trained to believe that peace is a reward, that you earn it once you've done enough, achieved enough, changed enough. But peace is not the prize, it's the path. You don't wait to be present once you succeed. You become successful because you're present. You make better decisions. You choose people who reflect your values. You work from clarity, not confusion. You build with precision, not panic. And all of that starts not with more action, but with more awareness. Awareness is what reconnects you. It brings you back from the past, from the future, from the endless loops of self-doubt and projection. It reminds you that this moment, this breath, is the only place where change actually happens. And once you understand that, you stop outsourcing your power. You stop waiting for permission. You realize that life has been trying to meet you, trying to bless you, trying to flow through you, but it couldn't because you were never fully here. So return. Return to the breath. Return to the body. Return to the you that doesn't need to chase, just choose. Everything aligns not when the world changes, but when your presence deepens. Most people will hear this message and do nothing. Not because they're bad people, not because they're incapable of change, but because change requires silence, and silence exposes the very truth they've spent years avoiding. Distraction is safe, noise is familiar, reaction gives them something to do. But stillness demands honesty. It strips away the excuses. It turns the mirror back on them. It shows them how far they've drifted from themselves, how much of their life has been lived on autopilot, how many of their choices were made out of fear, not alignment. And that truth, that weight is heavy. So instead of sitting with it, they scroll, they distract, they numb, and they stay in the loop. But there are just a few who hear this and something clicks. A quiet voice inside says, enough. Not loud, not dramatic, just clear. That moment is everything, because it's the moment they stop outsourcing their power. They stop waiting for the right time, the right person, the right motivation. They realize no one is coming to save them, that the freedom they've been chasing will not be found in validation or volume or performance. It will be found in their own return. Their return to discipline, to breathe, to presence, to self. These are the ones who change everything, not through control, not through force, but through consistent, intentional focus on one thing, themselves. They stop trying to fix the world and start refining their own habits. They stop chasing peace and start creating it. They stop reacting to noise and start listening to silence. Their actions become deliberate. Their speech becomes lighter. Their mind becomes calmer, not because life got easier, but because they got clearer. And when that clarity settles, it changes the way they move through the world. They don't fight it anymore. They move with it. It starts small. 1 hour of silence. 1 journal entry. 1 workout that wasn't skipped. 1 boundary held. 1 conversation they didn't have because it didn't deserve their energy. These aren't grand gestures. They're sacred repetitions. And those repetitions build rhythm. That rhythm becomes identity. And that identity, that's when alignment begins. Because now, instead of wondering when life will finally go their way, they become the kind of person who meets life with steadiness, with direction, with truth. And suddenly, the world doesn't feel like it's against them anymore because they've stopped being against themselves. This is the way, the quiet way, the rooted way, the unshakable path that doesn't need to be advertised. You don't need to convince people when you're aligned. Your energy speaks, your presence lands. You're no longer pulled into every conversation, every conflict, every opinion that doesn't match your frequency. You simply remain calm, clear, certain. Because now you're moving in sync with your own truth, not trying to keep up with everyone else's. You are not here to react. You are here to return. Return to your breath. Return to your integrity. Return to your standards. Return to your own rhythm. You are not here to please. You are here to align. And alignment won't always look impressive. It won't always feel exciting, but it will always feel right. And that's the shift. When you no longer chase what's missing, you become what you were missing. And everything you thought you needed, the peace, the direction, the connection, the respect, the opportunity, it will all meet you the moment you become who you were meant to be. If this message brought you back to yourself, don't let it fade. Return to it daily. Make it a ritual. Let it sharpen your focus and calm your spirit. Subscribe if you're ready to start your own practice. And if you want to go deeper into silence, structure, and discipline, the path is below. You don't need more from the world. You need less from it so you can give more to you. Focus on yourself and watch how everything else finally falls into place.